Okay, this is video 2 for a push on Friday, April 10th. On August 10th, a large mob of sans-culottes stormed the Tuileries Palace, where the king and the queen were living, slaughtered 600 of the king's Swiss guards. This was followed by another act of horrendous violence. In September, following the series of defeats by French armies, a round of 1,200 individuals who had been arrested as potential counter-revolutionaries were slaughtered by a frenzied mob that was reacting to rumors that the prisoners were about to escape and attack French armies from behind. The Paris Commune then forced the National Assembly to call for elections for a new legislative body using the universal male suffrage. This body, known as the Convention, was given the task of drawing up a new constitution, ending the constitutional monarchy. Meanwhile, the military acts that had spurred on these developments began to change. The threat to Paris, which had spurred on the September massacres, ended quickly with the French army, inflamed by revolutionary passion, stopped the combined Austrian and Prussian advance at the Battle of Valmy. With the revolution apparently saved from the combined threat of foreign armies and counter-revolution, France officially became a republic in September of 1792, and the royal family was placed under arrest, following the discovery of the cache of letters that Louis XVI had exchanged with his brother-in-law. The Austrian Emperor Louis was tried in early 1793, guillotined before the large crowd yelling for his blood. So that in the first liberal phase, the constitutional monarchy phase, and created the now second phase, the radical phase, the Republican phase. All right, European reactions to the French Revolution. Oops, hang on, lost my thing, got out of control. The French Revolution had a huge impact on the rest of Europe. For those on the continent who had been influenced by the ideas of Enlightenment, the events of France seemed like a breath of fresh air, and they eagerly created radical political associations of their own in places like the Italian states and the German states. At first, Austria and Prussia thought that the revolution would be useful for bringing about the eclipse of France as the major power on the continent. They soon came to regret their initial complacency and began to see the revolution for its potential to spread to other areas, possibly to threaten their own thrones. In Great Britain, the immediate reaction to the fall of the Bastille and the abolition of French feudalism, along with the establishment of the constitutional monarchy, was quite friendly. For many, it appears as if the violent rivalry between the two nations would finally come to a peaceful conclusion. William Pitt the Younger, the British Prime Minister, stated, "The present convulsions in France must sooner or later culminate in general harmony and regular order. In this circumstance, France will stand forth as one of the most brilliant powers of Europe. She will enjoy just that kind of liberty which I venerate." His chief political opponent, Charles Fox, was even more enthusiastic. He called the revolt the greatest event that ever happened in the history of the world. Burke's conservatism. Only Edmund Burke, a leading British politician attached to the Whig faction, was cautious. In 1790, he wrote Reflections on the French Revolution, which expressed his opposition to revolution. Burke was not against reform. He himself had been interested in the reform of certain aspects of English political life. He feared, however, that once the traditional system of deference was removed, it would dramatically alter the role of such institutions as the monarchy and the church, and eventually force would rule. To that end, he predicted that the revolution would take a more violent direction, something that was rather present considering he was writing only in 1790. Burke believed that reform could take place only by keeping the present political structure and seeking to achieve evolutionary rather than revolutionary change. His work serves as the foundation of peace for modern political conservatism. Britain was eventually brought into the Europe-wide war sparked by the revolution. By the fall of 1792, French armies, following initial setbacks, were pushing the enemy back and began to occupy territories such as the Austrian Netherlands. They also captured much of the Rhineland and the import city of Frankfurt. Wherever French armies went, they brought with them the ideas of revolution. Although the National Convention promised fraternity and assistance to the peoples who want to recover from their liberties, the French armies soon became more of an occupying force than liberators. Okay, the Reign of Terror. In the Convention, the Girondins and the Jacobins continued to disagree over the direction of the revolution. The radical Jacobins sat on the left side of the hall, where the Convention met on the raised platform. This seating arrangement earned them the label the Mountain. On the right sat the conservative Girondins. This configuration was the origin of our modern political designations of left and right. In the middle of the hall sat those who were not directly tied to either faction. This section became known as the Plain, it was the group that held the key to the revolution, because whichever side they aligned, which would ultimately triumph. While both Girondins and the Jacobins were both considered Republican, they had diverging opinions regarding some of the most pressing issues of the day. The Girondins wished to make a clean break from the absolutist government of the previous decades while still maintaining the democratic spirit of the revolution. Toward this end, they favored exile for the king rather than execution when creating policies for the new French government. The Girondins pushed for it to maintain a degree of local autonomy instead of allowing for all authority to be centralized in Paris. They were also fearful of the political influence of the sans-culottes and hoped to stem their influence by maintaining a policy of voting rights based on property ownership. With regard to economy, the Girondins favored laissez-faire, the idea that the government should not play an active role in regulating the economy. In contrast, the Jacobins took a more radical stance. They believed that the king was a traitor and should therefore be executed, and they felt that the only way to maintain the spirit of the revolution was through a powerful and centralized government in Paris. Economically, the Jacobins argued for selective regulation of industries like the wheat trade in order to fight against wild inflation. Their policies were not specifically antagonistic towards the common people of Paris. Therefore, they garnered the increasing support of sans-culottes, a group that would be critical to Jacobin success in the next phase of the revolution. All right, I'm going to stop there at Reign of Terror and go ahead and go to the key concepts. I don't believe I covered any of the key concepts yet in the Unit 5 from the course guidebook, so I'm going to start there. And if I did, you can just listen to it again. All right, 5.2, looking at the rise of global markets. The expansion of European commerce and accelerated growth of the worldwide economic network, commercial rivalries, influenced diplomacy, and warfare among European states in the early modern era. European sea powers vie for Atlantic influence throughout the 18th century. Portuguese, Dutch, French, and British rivalries in Asia culminated in the British domination of India and Dutch control of the East Indies. Britain's ascendancy. Rivalry between Britain and France resulted in world wars fought in Europe and in the colonies, where Britain supplanting France as the greatest European power by the late 1700s. 5.4, the French Revolution. The French Revolution resulted from a combination of long-term social and political causes as well as the Enlightenment ideas, exacerbated by the short-term fiscal and economic crises. The first, or liberal phase of the French Revolution, established a constitutional monarchy, increased popular participation, nationalized the Catholic Church, and abolished hereditary privileges. After the execution of Louis XVI, the radical Jacobin republic led by Robespierre responded to opposition at home and war abroad by instituting the Reign of Terror and fixing prices and wages and pursuing a policy of de-Christianization. Revolutionary armies raised by mass conscription sought to bring up the changes initiated in France to the rest of Europe, which also led to a lot of nationalism when they conscripted people to their army. Women enthusiastically participated in the early phases of the revolution. However, while there were brief improvements in their legal status of women, citizenship in the Republic was soon restricted to men. The French Revolution's effects. Revolutionary ideas inspired a slave revolt led by Toussaint Louverture in the French colony of Saint-Domingue, where he became a independent nation in Haiti in 1804. While many were inspired by the revolution's emphasis on equality and human rights, others condemned its violence and disregard for traditional authority. I think that's probably it for now. Everything else seems... yeah, we're good there. Okay. So we'll stop there. Y'all have a good weekend. Good day.